Call the Monday, May 8th, 2017 Planning Commission meeting to order. The first item on the agenda is roll call. Pidd here, Price, Hema,
Here.
Charnel, Daniels,
Yo.
Lundell,
Here.
and Dalton.
Yep.
That brings us to the third thing, which is the approval of the agenda.
I move to approve.
Second. I'll second that motion.
I've got a motion by Mr. Hema and a second by Mr. Lundell. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Brings us to number 4, which is the approval of the minutes from the April 10th, 2017 Planning Commission meeting.
So move. Second.
I've got a motion by Mr. Dalton and a second by Mr. Hema. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. That brings us to number 5, which is public input. Citizens may speak to issues not on the agenda. Before speaking, please give your name and address for the record, and please limit your comments to 3 minutes. Anybody here for something other than what's on the agenda tonight? All right, that brings us to number 6, which is the public hearing. We've got 2 of them tonight. There's got a conditional use permit for light industrial use, B2 zone. Samantha, you're
If you could allow me, I'll do an introduction of Samantha.
absolutely.
I'm honored to welcome Samantha Meyer to our group. You recall that the city and Goodhue County worked together on a collaborative employee for planning and zoning on our part and for a building permit technician on their part. So we're basically looking at a 50-50 position here. And it kind of stems back from, well, it does stem back from a Economic Development Authority meeting where they talked about, Dave's plate was really overloaded with economic development activity. And they wanted him to focus primarily on economic development and try and more so get away from the planning commission, planning agenda type stuff, to give him more time to be proactive and so forth in economic development. Council concurred with that, and then we started the process on finding someone to fill that position. So Samantha, maybe you want to give a little background on yourself.
Yeah, so like Ron said, my name is Samantha Meyer. I'm originally from Baldwin, Wisconsin. Went to Minnesota State Mankato for my undergraduate degree in urban and regional studies. And then I just graduated this past Saturday with a master's in city planning from Mankato. Oh, thank you. So, this is my first full-time position, and I'm really excited to be working with Cannon Falls. I see a lot of opportunity here. I found an apartment to live in here in the city, so I'm exploring everything, and then it's been fun going to Red Wing also to work with Goodhue County. So, really looking forward to being on board here.
Excellent. Well, at this time, I'd like to open the public hearing for the conditional use permit for light industrial use in the BT zone. Did you have something for us on that?
So in your packet, you find the breakdown of kind of what is happening. Dr. Tiye Sterna, who is here tonight, if any questions come up also, of River Edge Properties LLC, applied for a conditional use permit to allow light manufacturing at a property currently zoned as B2. It's at 6352 320th Street in Cannon Falls. Currently there's 2 large vacant buildings, and then there's a rear building that is currently being leased out. The proposed use is for Ideal Canopy Tent and Structure Limited to operate out of the Westerly building. They're headquartered in Canada, and they're looking to expand into the United States. Activities that would occur on site include light manufacturing work, like assembly of products, sewing and seaming of the canopies, and some less intensive warehousing and distribution. Based on staff's investigation and speaking with Dr. Sterna, the site is sufficiently accessible to the highways and the streets nearby. There's adequate off-street parking, and the use is in compliance with the City of Cannon Falls Comprehensive Plan, so staff recommends approval of the conditional use permit.
Thank you. Did we have any input from the public? Questions from the planning commission members?
We'd be using the entire, all of the buildings, or just one? Just the west one?
Just the west one.
Okay.
But not the far west. No, not the far west for now. Should I come here or talk?
Sure, come on up, yeah, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity to come and talk to the council, to the planning commission, sorry. And I think the plan is Ideal Canopy and Tensy's a company owned by a friend of mine. He is expanding his business, and he was asking for space, in which we both worked on to get him a space there. And he signed a lease, a 5-year lease for the building. He's planning to do some light industrial work, including making the structures and some light metal work, assembly and sewing, those kind of things for his company. He's expanding his business into the U.S. market, so he will be occupying at this time the larger warehouse in the back on the western end of the building, and another company is so he's using the bigger and other place smaller, more on the south end warehouse has been leased to another person who is going to be just storing his stuff and running his bait shop and things like that from here. And some cabinet shop. So it'll be light industrial work, as Samantha explained, and it'll create some additional jobs, additional revenue for Cannon Falls, and we are excited to have him here.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
I think it's a great idea to put those buildings to work out there.
They've been empty for more than a year, haven't they?
Yep.
Almost 2 years.
Fill them up.
Yeah,
So is the chair looking for a motion to approve?
just want to approve the
Sure.
conditional use permit.
I'll make a motion to approve the conditional use permit.
Yeah, I'll second that.
I've got a motion by Mr. Dalton.
Mr. Chair, you should probably close the public hearing.
Oh,
first.
yeah, we gotta do that.
All right.
Thank you.
At this time, I'd like to close the public hearing for the conditional use permit for River Edge Properties. And I've got a motion by Mr. Dalton
Now I changed my mind.
and a second by Mr. Emma. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. That brings us to our second public hearing, which is the amendment to the sign ordinance to allow dynamic signage in residential business zone.
All right, so public hearing item 6B, the Planning Commission discussed at its April meeting that to amend the sign ordinance allowing dynamic signage in the residential business district, particularly along 5th Street North or Highway 20. Upon discussion with the city attorney and myself, the ordinance cannot apply only to certain portions of the residential business district. So we couldn't put only properties along Highway 20. It has to apply to the entire district itself. Therefore, in the ordinance, I wrote that the businesses that use it have to be commercial businesses. No industrial businesses can have dynamic signage. No residences can have dynamic signage. Let's see. And section 152-355 of the city code currently allows dynamic signs only in the B2, B1, and at public places such as schools, churches, athletic complexes, etc.
sounds like it pretty much limited it's to those businesses.
Yeah,
that they're-
to those businesses in the residential business district. So we limited it as much as we could legally.
So if a manufacturer would want to have a sign like that, we'd have to look at some different.
Yeah,
have to
they
look
would
at
have
an
to come and,
exception.
yeah, do some sort of
They'd have to
another
come at us
amendment.
individually, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, okay.
Do we have any input from the public on this?
This just allows the lighting of it, right? No motion, no flashing lights?
Yep, correct. So no motion,
Just a lit
just,
sign.
yep, just lit signs.
There's size limits on these?
There are, it's not included in the packet. It's in the sign ordinance though, in the zoning.
What's the square footage of that that's allowed? Do you know offhand?
Yeah, there are signage limits. The only change we're making here in this is that it, be a larger zone, right? We haven't changed our signage.
Correct. So the dynamic signs would still have to abide by the signage laws in our zoning code. Offhand, I haven't memorized the whole zoning code yet, but
Yeah, I'm familiar with it, so, yeah. Yeah,
Mark Norton with Soul Fisher Collision and Repair. And the current dynamic signage ordinance allows for a 35% of the sign space to be dynamic signage, consistent with, the standard signage restrictions. Then the other thing to the aspect of motion or not, actually in Cannon Falls, the signs are limited to changing only once every 5 minutes, with the exception of time and temperature, only if time and temperature is not part of the active or the other message, so you can't sneak it in. I would be in favor of the ordinance change, and one, obviously it would benefit my business, but secondly, I believe dynamic display can be a very aesthetic sign compared to some of the replaceable message signs that are, existent and would be compliant with the existing code. It's a very easy way to put a message out to customers. In my particular instance, being close to 20, visibility of my shop is pretty much limited until you're past it if you're heading southbound, which creates a additional traffic concern, so it would be better if we had that greater visibility and signage as well. So mine is really there to improve the aesthetics of my business, and I think it can go a long ways along that corridor.
So do we just need a motion to
Yeah.
close the hearing? Oh, sorry, we gotta close.
Any other comments from anyone? At this time, I'd like to close the public hearing for the amendment to the sign ordinance. That brings us to item 7B, which is Resolution 2017-5. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion, we accept the signage as they've discussed.
I'll second that motion.
I've got a motion by Mr. Daniels and a second by Mr. Lundell. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. I get them mixed up. I got them
Got 'em
back.
turned around.
We won't know that.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Well, you guys aren't sitting in the right spots. One of
That's
you
right,
was
they
over
moved
here.
They moved.
Now I gotta start all over.
Don't tell the teacher.
That brings us to number 8, which is Planning Commission member comments. Anybody have anything?
Yeah, I do. Smith, I was talking around a little bit today, and he mentioned you're kind of taking a look at the whole zoning
for the city. When do you plan on starting that?
When?
Yeah, or have you already?
So I've read the whole zoning ordinance cover to cover. It was thrilling. Whenever there's right now is really our busy time with all these conditional use permits, things like that. Once it kind of starts to slow down a little bit, I think that myself and Dave Maroney and Mr. Johnson are going to talk about really where do we start with the rewrite of the zoning code. I have experience with other cities and their zoning codes, which have been updated within the last couple of years. So kind of just discussing what do we change, what do we take out, what can we put in, things like that. So over the summer is when we'll really begin discussing it, but I anticipate more over the fall and winter months is really when it's going to be picking up for that.
And we've got a meeting scheduled next week, the three of us, to because Dave has had plans of updating that zoning ordinance, but just hasn't had the time in the last, since before I came here, and that's been a little over 3 years. So he has notes, files, and so forth from before when he had wanted to do an update. So we're going to have that discussion with Sam on next Thursday, I think it is. So she gets kind of the direction where Dave thinks we should go with this, and then we'll continue the discussions on it. But I've seen it since I've been here. Anytime you have this many conditional use permits, obviously you've got situations with your zoning ordinance that need to be looked at, and Dave's definitely been of that opinion for a long time.
We're all done, right?
Yeah. I think so. That brings us to number 9, which is adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
I'll second.
I've got a motion by Mr. Hammond and a second by Mr. Lundell. All in favor? Or
Aye.
all in favor by Mr. Dalton.
You're just like Joe Mauer last night's ballgame. You're just kind of having an off day, Dan.
Totally
Jeez.
ruined the conversation I was having with my wife when he hit that home, when he won the game. Yeah.
Can we say aye?
So we're all done, right?
Aye. Yep,
All in
aye.
favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
When he made that sort of right in the middle of the conversation.
Name tag.